Hey guys, Granditamias here, and welcome back to another channel update. It's been far too long since I last did one of these, so I know I'm going to have a lot of questions to answer in the comment response, and I'll get to that in due time, but first, as always, I want to address the reception to my last couple of videos. Starting, as always, with the Alvin and the Chipmunks elaborations, you may have noticed throughout the year they tended to be longer, with some of them being around 15 minutes, or in the case of my travel elaboration, over 20 minutes. And that one didn't do too well in terms of views compared to the others, even though it's the one I'm probably the most proud of. I'm not sure how much you guys care about the length of the elaboration videos, but like the shortest one in recent memory is the one I did about the CGI series not coming back. That was around 8 minutes, but I haven't done videos that are less than 8 minutes than that in a long time, really. Like, if you go back to, like, the early days of my channel, some of those videos were, well, yeah, really crappy now, but usually between 5 and 8 minutes. Like, that 2-part Charlene video I did adds up to about 12 minutes, and if I did that now, it would easily be one video. Then again, the focus was completely different, so I guess that justifies them being separate. I did try doing a YouTube short about the Tweet tribe, which itself hasn't gotten too many views. So I'm wondering if I should do more of those or stick to longer 14-15 minute average videos. Like I said, the elaboration about traveling is my favorite video from recent memory, and part of that is because of my increased interconnectivity between videos, like how much I talked about my Peru trip last year. Sorry if you guys have been getting tired of that, but in the case of this year so far, I've been talking more about the future of Alvin and the Chipmunks in general, mainly because I know how anxious some of you are about these uncertain times for the franchise. I'm anxious too, but I'm still confident that the Chipmunks can turn their image around. As far as future Alvin and the Chipmunks videos are concerned, I haven't figured out what I'm going to do for my next elaboration yet, but I've been tossing around some ideas. And yes, I know CinemaSins did an Everything Wrong with Alvin and the Chipmunks 2007 video, and just like with Ruby Gilman, I will be sinning that video. Rest assured, I am working on it. I was stuck in the writing phase for a while, but I'm going to get on to recording and editing very soon. For the non-AATC content, I decided to end my series of Sonic videos, as much as I know some of you are disappointed. Even after the third movie came out and left us with a lot to chew on, I still haven't changed my decision. In fact, not only did I relay a lot of my predictions for the fourth movie in my spoiler review, but I'd argue that the future of the Sonic movies is less certain now than it was after the second movie came out. Like, yeah, we knew Shadow's arrival meant a Sonic Adventure 2 type story, but I don't think that Amy and Metal Sonic's arrival automatically means a Sonic CD type story, as many people have been speculating. Mainly because Shadow as a character is specifically tied to Sonic Adventure 2, whereas Amy and Metal Sonic each aren't as integral to Sonic CD just because it was their first appearance. I'd argue that later games did even more with those characters, and even then, their roles weren't specific to those stories. I guess my decision to not do any more Sonic videos might not be as concrete later on, but for the near future, I'm definitely not going back on that decision, unless they somehow introduce Tikal, which they're never going to do at this point. For Transformers videos, I know it's been a while since my last one, which was about TF1, but I will say I took a lot of time researching and writing for a potential video that, if I do, is going to be pretty long. Like, longer than any video I've done before, by a wide margin, because I wrote, like, over 50 pages worth of content. I also want to talk about my DreamWorks Renaissance video, because that was another kind of one-off thing that I had fun making, and I know it's probably a lot more relevant now, since Shrek 5 has been hogging up the news feeds for the past few weeks, which I might as well address that now. I don't think that redesigning the characters is inherently a bad idea. We already saw that they did that with Puss in Boots 2 to fit the new oil paint aesthetic, so this should have been expected. Plus, you have to remember that it's been 15 years since the last Shrek movie, and the files for the animation models that they used then aren't compatible now since the software is constantly evolving. The ogre characters I don't mind, even if I would have preferred something closer to their original designs. I'm not a fan of how Pinocchio and the Magic Mirror look. I think they should have been kept closer to their original designs as well, but it's Donkey where I really have a problem. He just looks so scrawny, like he's malnourished. Like, this is how his original model looked. Notice the volume and roundness of his basic outline. So yeah, those are just my thoughts on the Shrek 5 teaser, but the movie doesn't come out until Christmas of next year, so maybe they'll pull a Sonic and change the designs. Also, no, I don't think that the movie will incorporate the meme humor of Shrek like this teaser does. That scene is not going to be in the movie anyway, so this was probably just meant to drum up hype. As for other DreamWorks stuff, I know it's been a while since I last talked about Ruby Gillman, and like I said, I could still do a concept art video for it, but honestly, I haven't been as focused on Ruby Gillman in recent months. Like, I still rewatch the film every now and again, and I still love it to the DreamWorks moon and back. But since big news about it isn't likely to pop up for a while, I don't feel any urgency to go back to making videos on it. Like I said, I still could, but I'm just not in the mood right now. That could change, but I feel like Alvin and the Chipmunks, Transformers, and some other one-off topics I'm thinking of trying will take priority in the near future. In the last update video, I talked about some of the movies I had seen around that time, and late last year as well as early this year, I saw Alien Romulus, as I said in my Sonic 3 video. That one was good and, well, scary, like, that ending was wicked. Oh, speaking of which, Wicked, yeah. That was a good quasi-prequel to the original Wizard of Oz, which I'm assuming that's what it's supposed to be, kind of like Wonka. Kind of weird that they pulled a Dune and split it into two parts, which I didn't know beforehand. Also, I could not see Ariana Grande in this movie and not picture Kat from Victorious. I know her better for that than her singing career. I also saw Valiant 1 back in January. Definitely recommend it. I saw it just because Ruby Gillman's voice actress was in it. Captain America 4 was alright, better than some post-Endgame MCU movies, but definitely not as good as the second one. Oh yeah, and I saw the new Paddington movie because, you know, I didn't see the previous two Paddington movies, so I was a little lost at first, but I will say that Paddington is another franchise that I wish Alvin and the Chipmunks was more like, because they're already similar in a couple of ways. Like the talking animals, the adopted family, the hilarious hijinks, and from my experience, Paddington 3 gets a lot of stuff right about Peru, like the architecture, the wildlife, and that Catholicism is a big thing over there. I have also seen the trailer for the new Jurassic World movie, and I'm considering doing review videos once it comes out, but last time I did Jurassic videos was, back when Dominion came out, and those didn't do too well. I will say that I'm not very hyped by the film's premise and some, let's just say, decisions, but I'll give it a chance. Okay, onto the comment response. This comment comes from Neverland to Dreamland, and I'm only going to be focusing on the last part of this comment. I have one question to Granditamias and the entire AATC community. What is the best episode of the 2015 series? Well, unfortunately, there's no objective measure to say what the best episode of that show is, so I'll just tell you my favorite, and I've said this before in other videos, but Treasure Hunt is my favorite episode of the 2015 series, for reasons such as the characters working as a unit, as I said in my last video, as well as, obviously, the adventure aspect and exploring. It's just, they have a goal, they have a plot, they get to it, and that's what's so interesting. If there's something tangible that gets these characters to want to go from point A to point B, I think that's really interesting, especially considering the dynamics of the characters. Songol says, I think having Alvin not seeing Dave as his dad, but the other two do, would have been a great mini-arc. Yeah, go off more into the boys coming of age, realizing that while they have a loving parent, he really can understand what they're going through. Harry becoming that mainstay villain antagonist for the boys would have been gold. See him going from human to human with his plans. Maybe Harry is the one to back a human band that is against the Chipmunks and Chipettes, and this would be the first time the boys meet another chipmunk like them. I do hope that something happens to give AATC fans the love and good stories that it deserves. Well, yeah, this is pretty interesting, and it brings up some possibilities that I didn't initially think of. I'm not totally sure about Harry being the one to introduce the boys to the Chipettes, because historically they met the Chipettes on their own in the very first episode, or set of episodes, I should say, in the 80s series. But Harry, did at one point try and trick the Chipettes, so it's not like that interaction is foreign to this franchise. As for Harry being a mainstay villain, I can see how his trickster nature could lend itself to, I guess, the fact that this franchise is very kid-centric, so they're not going to have a villain that's, like, evil and, like, wants destruction and, like, really hates the Chipmunks, like, at their core and wants to, I guess, harm them. Okay, yeah, that's exactly why they would stick with someone as simple as Harry, because Harry only wants to trick them out of money or fame, as do some of the other villains in the past. But assuming that violence was not an issue, I would really like a villain who is imposing and, just evil because they hate the Chipmunks or Chipettes on a ideological level. That AATC fangirl says, as much as I liked the 2015 series, Season 6 and 7 being cancelled was for the better because it gives Bagdasarian Productions the chance to think of new ideas and revive the franchise sooner rather than just letting the 2015 series go on further downhill. I hope we get news of the next major update in the next year or two. And this comment really hits the nail on the head for what I was trying to get across in that video, that because the series was going on for so long, it was distracting Bagdasarian Productions away from potentially new ideas for the next reboot. And with the Fox era also having long since been over, there was no promise of new content coming from that either. And like with the later seasons of the show, I just don't think that Season 6 and 7 would have done enough for the franchise to justify existing and keeping the show going on for that long. Mario Bros Fan 1000 says, while I haven't seen all of the 80s series episodes, Vinny does sound like an interesting character. If she were to come back in a new show or movie, I think she should be a recurring character that shows up on phone calls or Christmas/birthday parties. Well, Vinny lives out in the forest, so she's not going to have access to a phone, but I totally get having an interest in Vinny as a character despite not having seen much of the 80s series, because that's how I got introduced to Vinny. I was scrolling through Monkipedia one day, saw the article on Vinny, and realized, oh, the Chipmunks have a mother. There is a lot of story potential out of this. And after I did finally get the episode on DVD and watched it, I realized, there is so much that could be done with Vinny, but the franchise, for some reason, just doesn't want to. Either because of the complexity of having to explain the existence of another Chipmunk character, or maybe Janice just didn't want to come up with another voice for the character. Because even though Janice voiced Vinny in one episode of the 80s show, she voiced most of the characters in the CGI show, and some of them did sound a little similar to each other. Like Theodore has some similarities to Jeanette and Brittany, who Janice also voiced. So maybe she just didn't want to come up with a new voice for another Chipmunk character. Alright, next comment from Not Wise If. I think I definitely mispronounced that. I think my biggest issue with fans trying to monkify songs is that they'll pitch it up so high that it feels like nails on a chalkboard, when in reality, even the official songs aren't that pitched up. They're only pitched up slightly, so I kind of roll my eyes at most monkified covers I see. And I bring up this comment because I wanted to, further elaborate on something that might be seen as hypocritical. I doubt it probably came off that way to most of you who watched that video, but I do want to make it clear that just because I explain how Chipmunk voices and the songs are created doesn't necessarily mean I have a problem with the people who do pitch-ups. I mean, as fans, we only have a limited amount of resources, but even still, we can all understand, and we should be spreading the word, making it widely aware that the real songs are made in a different way to how Chipmunkified covers are, even though we can still make and enjoy them. Andy Names 6 says, what made you fall in love with AATC? Well, I'm not sure, in the context of this comment, what it means, in regards to, the source that introduced me to it, or, what made me, attached, to, the concept and, the stories of the franchise in general. I guess for the former, I should say that I had heard the Chipmunk songs since a very young age, and cartoon characters like Alvin and the Chipmunks were commonly, plastered all over my relatives' house when I would travel downstate for holidays. But as for what I love about Alvin and the Chipmunks and has made me want to come back to this franchise time and time again is, Well, yeah, like I said, the adventures, the character dynamics, how, like, even though they constantly annoy each other, like, they all manage to be family and get things done. I guess it might also have something to do with the fact that I have two younger brothers, so in a way, our dynamic is also kind of like Alvin and the Chipmunks. Like, I'm Simon being the smart one who's responsible, the middle brother being the obnoxious one, and the youngest one being the, cute and sensitive one. Martin Ferret says, and this was the same person who informed me about the Chipmunk Adventure script, by the way. Thanks again for that. But yeah, Martin Ferret says, why does Alvin's shirt have a hole in it? Well, unfortunately, there's no answer to that as far as, like, in-universe goes. But artistically, I think that the creators of Alvin and the Chipmunks added that to Alvin's character design just to show that Alvin is kind of, I guess, rough and scrappy. Like he still cares about his appearance, but he's not going to care if, there's one tiny hole in his shirt. Kiana says, as I got older, I don't blame the mobs for wanting to kill Frankenstein. I would if I saw a monster that could literally kill you.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to disagree here because, it's literally the message of the film that even though Frankie may look intimidating and probably could kill someone, that's not who he's supposed to be. That's not his character. He's just a misunderstood monster who wants friends. Alley Queen DC says, looking at the 2015 CGI reboot, my second main problem with the show is that every episode has no variety and feels the same because there's mainly 3 locations these chipmunks are in, and in a future reboot, if they can, I really hope that there's more landscape. And I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about how there's a problem that I have when I'm trying to go back through these episodes and get screen caps for videos, and that is, like, when a character says a certain line and I need a screenshot of that, unless there's a certain object in the scene that, is unique and makes the scene stand out, I really have trouble remembering what episode it's from. Like this shot here, this could be from any number of episodes. Or this shot with Alvin and Dave, can you name this episode? There are some outliers though, like this shot of Eleanor doing a karate pose. I remember this shot very well because obviously I remember the pose very well, so I remember that's from the episode Sherlock Chipmunk. And while I'm on the subject of that episode, Jeanette in a detective hat. That's a good thing to show that this is the episode Sherlock Chipmunk. In fact, there are quite a few examples of characters wearing unique outfits for one episode to help me identify them. So, that visually helps, but as far as, like, certain lines of dialogue, it's very hard most of the time. Israel Jones says, you like Alvin and the Chipmunks? Man, you need to start watching some adult movies. Okay, who's gonna tell this person the irony? Star56 says, who are your favorite Trolls characters? I'm gonna have to say, well, Branch is the one that I relate to the most. There are times where I'm grumpy and, like, not really, like, in the musical mood like he was in the first movie. And sometimes I have a preparedness mindset, kind of like how, like, he has a bunker with a bunch of resources. Poppy as well, she's really cute, and I like her dynamic with Branch. Oh, and Viva. Viva's really cool. She's just a cheerful ball of super energy who's impossible to contain. She has a traumatic backstory. Oh yeah, and her character design. She's a more flamboyant version of one of the main characters, which is kind of why I compared her to the fanonized version of Charlene the Chipette that the Alvin and the Chipmunks community has latched onto. But yeah, I'd say that those are my top 3 favorite characters, and I definitely hope that Viva returns for Trolls 4 if DreamWorks decides to make that. The Gabe says, and I want to focus on just the first part here, I too don't care that the Furious 5 weren't in the movie. What actually bothers me about Kung Fu Panda 4 is that Zhen genuinely had potential as a character, pretty rough past with no one who truly loved her, but nothing was made of it. And I'm gonna have to disagree here because I just hate the mindset that Kung Fu Panda 4 had wasted potential when utilizing potential is not all that movies can do. They can also be used to build up potential. Especially since this is the start of a new trilogy and they're setting up Zhen to be the next Dragon Warrior whether you like it or not. And that as well, I really don't get the hate for Zhen as a character and her role in this passing the torch story. Or that should have even been the story. That would be like saying that the story of Toy Story shouldn't have been about a character, I guess, meeting the new kid on the block, so to speak, who is different than them in every way, but has to learn to appreciate them. Nothing about the world of Toy Story said that couldn't be the story, but it was. But going back to Jen as a character, I feel like the complaint about her taking the mantle from the main character is a lot like in Generation 1 Transformers when Hot Rod replaced Optimus Prime, and yeah, fans were not happy about that. Although in that instance, Optimus Prime was killed. But here I don't think that Poe is in any of danger of dying in these movies, and I really just don't understand the mentality of wanting Poe to be the Dragon Warrior forever. Especially when the theme of change was important to Kung Fu Panda 4, and again, something I really liked about that movie. Admit it, you guys really only hate Jen just because she's voiced by Awkwafina. Gumundary says, I know you don't like Disney for their scummy business practices, but are there any films that you like from Disney? And yes, I will say that there are older Disney films that I like. It's really like Frozen and Beyond where I just completely boycotted them. One of the first Disney films that I remember watching on DVD was the original Dumbo, and yeah, I know, like, that movie has not aged well. But it completely flew over my head when I was 5. Also, Brother Bear, that's a really good one. Disney's Dinosaur, that's what introduced me to Carnotaurus. The original Lilo and Stitch as well, which is getting a live-action remake. And a couple others from around that time, like Meet the Robinsons or the first Wreck-It Ralph. But, yeah, like, after Frozen, just no. Johnny Mason says, I believe someone tried to create a sequel to Transformers Prime that introduced Galvatron and his minions. That should have been Hasbro's job. Transformers Prime could have been a series that could have lasted at least 5 years. Well, I'm totally fine with where Transformers Prime ended. But yeah, I have heard of that Galvatron's Revenge fan film. I actually haven't seen it, but from what I've heard, it's terrible. And honestly, the idea of bringing in Galvatron is kind of off-putting to me since the Unicron resurrected Megatron was kind of a Galvatron. And there are other villains in the Transformers multiverse besides Galvatron and his minions that I think could have been done well in a post-TF Prime world, if we're forgetting Robots in Disguise. Personally, if I were developing a continuation to TF Prime, I would have it be about Ultra Magnus leading the Autobots, and maybe they go hopping around different Cybertronian colony planets, which are a thing in the Aligned continuity. And yeah, focusing on reestablishing Cybertron as a great society, and maybe they even return to Earth, set up a new military base so we could see the humans return, like with Agent Fowler, June, and older versions of the kids. I know that'd be unpopular, but I would like it. Skint Graphite says, I would have called the movie Transformers War Dawn. And I think that would have been fitting, because yeah, the movie already had Orion Pax and Elita 1, and yeah, in my spoiler review, I suggested Blue Streak could have replaced Bumblebee, but honestly, now I'm thinking that Dion could have been that character instead. I would much sooner believe Keegan-Michael Key voicing Dion than voicing Bumblebee. Speaking of which, the Transformers franchise really needs to bring back Dion in some capacity. JM9852 says, hopefully Tikal gets added into Sonic Racing Crossworlds with Chaos, Gamma, Eggman, Nega, and Infinite, since that game is non-canon. Sega has no excuse to not bring back everyone in the Sonic universe. Tikal is long overdue for a comeback. Yeah, totally agree about that, but I'm not sure how Tikal would work for Sonic Racing Crossworlds, because she would need a vehicle, and, well, from her time period, there are no vehicles. But if they do bring her back, she would need a voice actress, and pretty much the entire cast from the adventure games have since been replaced as the Sonic franchise has gone on, so I'm not sure who they would get. On a side note, I know that Jakks Pacific makes Sonic figures. In fact, I've bought a few for my little brother, and they've been doing a lot of characters recently, some that are just as, if not more obscure than Tikal, so there's really no excuse to not make her someday. And if we get her, we should get Pachacamac, since that character's profile has been raised by the movie continuity with the Knuckles show, and Jakks Pacific does also make figures based on the Sonic movie versions of those characters, so I would totally buy the movie version of Pachacamac in a heartbeat as well. Lee Amphibia says, you have strange yet fascinating takes. I'm not sure what takes this comment is referring to, but I assume one of them is my suggestions for voice actors for Sonic characters, particularly Aaron Paul as Shadow. Again, not that Keanu did a bad job, but I will die on the hill that Aaron Paul would have been better. But yeah, I understand the strange part because I don't make hot takes in the sense of, oh, I directly hate this thing just like every other negative YouTuber. Instead, I try to stand out. I make observations and suggestions that might not have been thought of yet. Because even though I know some people are going to disagree, I hope that they do gain something out of it and that it was worth their time to hear. Anyway, those were all the questions that I wanted to answer for this video. Again, sorry it took so long. Hopefully it won't be long before the next update where I could answer more questions. So if you have them, please comment below. As always, social medias, Twitter and Discord are linked in the description. And with all that said, I hope you enjoyed. Have a nice day, and thank you for your time.